Let's talk about church buildings. Are they right or are they wrong? The answer is it can be either one. It all depends on what we do with it and how we view it. So let's tease this apart a little bit. Like most of my life, I've worshiped in a traditional church setting in a big church building, just like most of you have. The last 4 years, we moved to the home. We moved outside the backyard, outdoor settings. It's been really lovely. It's very tempting to say, we figured it out. We cracked the code. We're the ones who are doing it right. And anyone who's doing it in the old traditional way must not be doing it as good as we are. And I want us to avoid the temptation to categorize things like that or demonize the things that we've moved away from, because it is neither right nor wrong where you worship, the kind of room that you worship, the space you worship in, but it does really matter because it comes with certain strings attached. We have to really be aware of the strings that are attached, no matter what kind of space we meet in. Whether you meet under a tree or in a backyard or in an auditorium, they can all have blessings and they can all have problems. And here's what I mean. If you meet in a home in a neighborhood, it's actually a little bit easier to invite the neighbors. They're already used to you. They know the neighborhood. They know what a living room is like. That space can matter to a new person who might be a little bit more fearful of driving 20 minutes away and entering into a building they've never been in, into a room full of people who they're total strangers with, is just maybe a little bit less comfortable than walking across the street to the neighbor's house that they've already been in 4 or 5 times for dinner or hanging out or whatever. Space really matters. And there are principles that are embedded in the kind of space that we use that it's really important for us to be aware of. If you put church in a living room, it's more comfortable to people who've been in living rooms, whereas the unchurched people have never been in a church building. Is it right, living room right, church building wrong? I'm not saying that, but there are strings attached. There are principles and implications involved with whatever kind of space we choose to meet in that we have to be aware of. If you put church in a massive auditorium or a big dedicated facility, that has strings attached. Now, all of a sudden, you have to have budget, you have to have maintenance, you have to have independent cleaning in ways that are not typically going on in a weekly rhythm of the home. You're going to have leadership meetings that are going to be all tied up in knots over how that space is going to be used, over who can use it, over what the rules state, over if drinks can come in through the doors and blah, 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 what the color of things are. All that takes place in a way that would not take place in a home, because you have a dedicated space that a lot of different people are competing for, and what that's like. You have strong opinions on how it should be used, and all of a sudden time that could be used for shepherding is being tied up in talking about that space, and a lot of money that could be used for mission and benevolence is tied up in that space. And so it comes with strings attached. You have to be aware of what strings you are accepting when you accept the kind of space that you accept. You can't just look at every church that has a big facility and go wrong, just like you can't look at every church that meets in a home and go right. If you choose a building, you need to be very intentional about not allowing it to sidetrack the attention and the focus of the shepherding or of the budget. Honestly, this really comes down to, from a biblical perspective, you could say example, that they met in homes, but they also met in large spaces like the temple courts or the Hall of Tyrannus, where they rented out space and met. That all these things are in play when it comes to the biblical example. But as far as the principles involved, I think Romans 14 really plays a huge role in this. And I want to read a few verses from that right now. Romans 14:1, accept the one whose faith is weak without quarreling over disputable matters. There are matters that are disputable. Not every matter is indisputable. Not every single thing is fixed as a fixed right or wrong. Verse 2, one person's faith allows them to eat anything. Another whose faith is weak eats only vegetables. The one who eats everything must not treat with contempt the one who does not, and the one who does not eat everything must not judge the one who does, for God has accepted them. Who are you to judge someone else's servant? To their own master's servants stand or fall, and they will stand, for the Lord is able to make them stand. So let's just replace this with church buildings. Accept the one whose faith is weak without quarreling over disputable matters. One person's faith allows them to worship in a building, worship anywhere. Another person's faith only allows them to meet in a home. Those who meet in buildings must not treat with contempt those who do not, and those who meet in homes must not judge the ones who do not, for God has accepted them. Move on to verse 5. One person considers one day more sacred than another. Another considers every day just alike. Each of them should be, here's the key, verse 5, fully convinced in their own mind. Okay? So those who have moved on to house church go, oh my goodness, I can't believe you all still meet in buildings. That was such a distraction. We wasted so much money and it sat there empty, and all these criticisms. We've solved it all in the home church. But what if God called that church to be what it is? And what if God called that leadership to discern the decisions that they've made in the order in which they've made them, for the time and place and the community in which He's placed them, that is reaching a certain group of people that the home may not reach? And so we have to be incredibly humble and understand that those who meet in the building can be completely convinced that this is the will of God and be right about that. And those who meet in the home can be completely convinced that this is of God and be right about that. That it's not a one-size-fits-all. But that those who say, you shouldn't eat meat because it was offered to idols, and those who say, no, idols aren't really anything anyway, and so it's fine. Both are okay to hold to the conviction that they hold. And I think the church building is one of those types of items. Verse 6, whoever regards one day as special does so to the Lord. Whoever eats meat does so to the Lord. They give thanks, and whoever abstains from eating the meat does so to the Lord, and also gives thanks to God. For none of us lives for ourselves alone. None of us dies for ourselves alone. That's an important point here. The home church people, we don't live just to ourselves, and the people who have a building to meet in don't just live unto themselves. We live for Christ together, and we cannot allow the building issue to become a stumbling block or a dividing wall or a moral supremacy issue of the very things that we reject. We become critics of those things, or the things we embrace. It's like a new way. Oh, this is more ancient, it's more authentic, it's more biblical, it's more aligned with the principles, all that. I could try to make a case for all of those things, but that doesn't mean the other guy is wrong, the guy in the building. And then he says down in verse 13, therefore, let us stop passing judgment on one another. Instead, make up your mind to not put a stumbling block or obstacle in the way of your brother or sister. I am convinced, being fully persuaded in the Lord Jesus, that nothing is unclean of itself, but if anyone regards it as unclean, for that person it is. So if you think meeting in a building is kind of very questionable, just don't do it. It's okay not to do it. Verse 15, if your brother or sister is distressed of what you're eating, you are no longer acting in love. Do not by your eating destroy someone for whom Christ died. Therefore, do not let what you know is good be spoken of as evil. So he's saying, be careful what you say and be careful how you act in front of other people. And don't go about flaunting things in a way that will make other people stumble. Like, we're the house church people. We got it all right. You building people got it all wrong. And this person young in their faith who were reached in a building, meeting in a building, has meaning in relationships in that setting, are going, am I doing this wrong? And all of a sudden, they're making mountains out of molehills because they've seen that in you. Who are you to judge someone else's servant? He says, he says to be equally convinced in your own mind. Whatever side you're on, it's okay. And then he says in 19, therefore let us make every effort to do what leads to peace and mutual edification. Do not destroy the work of God for the sake of food. And whatever you believe about these things, keep them between yourself and God. I want to just leave you with a few things to consider if you do worship in a building. And the reason that I put these prompts out there is to prevent us from making the building an idol. Okay? And I think we could actually take some of these same things and use them on the home side. So what percentage of your budget is used up with the facility? Are you okay with that? And if not, what kind of adjustments could you make to see a better distribution of your funds to be used, not just tied up in brick and mortar? Okay. Secondly, what percentage of your leadership attention is taken up by the facility? Okay. Are you okay with that? And what sort of adjustments might you make if you're not? Thirdly, what percentage of the week does your facility, dedicated church space, sit empty? Is that good stewardship? How might you adjust it to include more community blessing in the way that you utilize your space? If you meet in homes, here's a few questions for you. How are you using your home in a way that truly blesses your neighbors, and it's not just something you're doing on Sunday? Okay? Are you okay with the way that your home is positioned in a way that's not just about those who attend the church service on Sunday in your home? It's entirely possible to have the same thing happen in a home where people are now driving into a home from other neighborhoods, and the neighborhood around it has no idea why the cars are there. How might you use your home to be a kingdom outpost? Your presence in the neighborhood, you're walking down the street in the evenings, meeting neighbors, talking with them, encouraging them, being salt, being light, in a way that your home can be a kingdom outpost in that community. Are you okay with the way you're leveraging your resources? Those of us who say, oh, we figured out this home thing, but we're falling back in the same trap of the very thing that we have rejected. So just some food for thought on that. We've had these home conversations and these building conversations a lot on Facebook recently, and I just want to lay out some of my thoughts on that. So I'm going to put up another video on home church, and I hope that you'll take a few minutes to watch it, some of the reasons that people have left the traditional church to come to home church, and some of the reasons people are leaving home church to go back to traditional church. I'm going to put those up. We've hit 10,000 subscribers a little while back. That was my ultimate goal, and we hit it far sooner than I ever could have imagined, and so I want to thank you for that. So watch another video. If you haven't subscribed, go for it, and we'll talk again soon.